Imagine stepping into a tomb sealed for 4 millennia. Your flashlight dances across walls painted with prayers to gods who have long since fallen silent. Then it catches on something brighter, the shimmer of gold. A death mask, its cold gaze empty stares back. Beneath it lies a body wrapped in linen, the remains of a boy who never saw adulthood. He didn't die by sword or plague. His death was written into his blood before he ever drew breath. His parents were brother and sister, as were theirs and theirs before them. Born a living god, yet condemned by the very divinity he was meant to embody. His spine curved like a question mark, his bones so fragile they betrayed every step. At 16, he leaned on a cane as he shuffled through palace halls heavy with incense and secrets, the whispers of courtiers trailing him like shadows. He never knew the word genetics. He only knew pain isolation and the cruel irony that every defect was praised as divine. What the priests saw as sacred signs were really the scars of centuries of incest. The palace called it holiness, but in truth it was a velvet-lined prison. And here's what chills the soul most. This isn't legend. It happened. For 3,000 years, Egypt's rulers, hailed as gods among mortals, conducted a silent experiment in bloodline purity. Not for science or salvation, but to guard what they believed was a spark of the divine. Brother married sister generation after generation until bloodlines twisted into knots no prayers could untangle. What emerged was a dynasty cloaked in gold yet riddled with suffering. To trace the origin, go back to the first king who looked at his sister not with love, but with duty. Only she, he believed, could protect the god within. His priests blessed it. His court applauded it. No one dared ask what the cost would be. The pharaohs weren't seen as human. They were Horus on earth, sons of the sun god Ra. How could celestial beings take mortal wives? The logic seemed flawless. And so devotion hardened into dogma. What began as faith became fate. At first the signs were subtle. An elongated skull here, a narrow jaw, there declared beautiful, even divine. A limp reframed as a sacred mark. Priests turned every warning into proof of the god's touch. Until in 1353 BCE, under the blistering Egyptian sun, a child was born who carried this burden to its most brutal extreme, Akhenaten. Long before he defied temples and gods, he was just a boy in a body at war with itself. His skull swelled unnaturally, his hips curved like a woman's, his chest seemed to soften rather than harden. Courtiers bowed low but dared not meet his eyes. Servants whispered. His parents, themselves siblings, called him blessed by the gods. But in truth, he bore centuries of accumulated error. When he took the throne, he shattered tradition. He told artists, paint us as we are misshapen, frail, real. The result was more than an artistic revolution. It was history's first portrait of inherited genetic damage. His daughters and rumored sons bore the same twisted skulls, the same fragile limbs immortalized on temple walls as divine but living lives defined by pain. Perhaps out of desperation, Akhenaten abandoned the old gods and turned to a new one. Aten, the sun disk. He built a new capital. Amarna, a city of hope and exile. But no god could undo generations of incest. The royal family withdrew further, both from their people and the wider gene pool. The city became a gilded cage. Akhenaten died young, the city vanished under drifting sand. His name was struck from history. Yet his legacy survived in his son. In 1341 BCE, a frail child named Tutankhamun was born. At 9, he wore the crown of Egypt, but every breath was a struggle. His foot twisted painfully inward, his spine curved like a sickle. Even standing required courage. Walking meant leaning on canes. Over 100 were buried with him, less as symbols of kingship than as lifelines. He married his half-sister, and together they had children who were never born alive. Their tiny, mummified bodies sealed beside him stand silent witness to a dynasty slowly dying from within. When Howard Carter opened Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, the world saw splendor. It took DNA testing decades later to reveal the truth, a child of incest whose fragile body had been betrayed by his own blood. One might hope the tragedy ended there, but history repeats itself with cruel consistency. Centuries later, after Alexander the Great's empire fractured, one of his generals founded the Ptolemaic dynasty. These foreign rulers saw the carvings on temple walls and thought this is how gods should rule. And so for 3 centuries, brother married sister again and again, until their family tree became a closed loop of repetition and ruin. The final flowering of this tragic line was Cleopatra, not the flawless beauty of Hollywood myth, but a brilliant, politically shrewd woman shaped by centuries of inbreeding. She spoke 9 languages, charmed emperors, and tried to save her line by looking outward. Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, foreign fathers who might bring fresh blood and break the curse. But Rome crushed that hope. Octavian hunted down her children. The dynasty ended not with quiet, but with blood and betrayal. When Cleopatra chose death, she did more than end her reign. She ended a centuries-long experiment in genetic isolation. Yet Egypt's story is broader than one family. Again and again, when foreign marriages brought new genes, dynasties thrived. When rulers returned to sibling marriage, the cycle of deformity, disease, and early death returned too. For royal children, life began with worship, but too often ended in pain. Imagine waking in marble chambers crowned before you could walk, yet too weak to run or play. Adored as divine, but knowing your own body was failing you. Modern science now explains what ancient minds could not. Each time siblings have children, there's a 1 in 4 chance of doubling harmful genes. And when this repeats across generations, what starts as subtle becomes catastrophic. The pharaohs thought they were preserving purity. In truth, they engineered suffering into their bloodlines. Their palaces became silent laboratories, their tombs monuments to the cost of pride disguised as piety. But their tragedy teaches us something. Their bones speak louder than any hieroglyph. They show that chasing purity can destroy what is most human. That love, real love, embraces difference. It mixes changes and creates strength. The pharaohs could not escape the destiny their ancestors chose. But we can choose differently. Their story is more than gold and power. It's a warning carried across centuries' obsession with bloodline is not divinity, it's decay. Their tombs lie buried in desert sands, but the message they left is clearer than any treasure. True power is compassion, and true legacy is kindness. We live in a world where science unmasks the dangers of what superstition once called sacred. But even today, echoes of that old arrogance remain in ideologies obsessed with purity, in voices that fear difference. Let the broken bones of kings remind us the future doesn't belong to the pure. It belongs to those brave enough to break the cycle. They ruled the world, but couldn't rule their own fate. And from the silence of their tombs, they ask us to do better. And so beneath golden masks and silent tombs, the pharaohs left us something far more precious than treasure, a warning carved in bone and whispered through centuries. In their blind pursuit of purity, they bred only suffering. In worshiping blood, they forgot love. Their glory became dust, but their mistakes still speak to us now. True strength is not found in clinging to sameness, but in embracing difference. Real love does not fear change, it transforms it into hope. The future does not belong to those obsessed with bloodlines and pride, but to those who dare to choose compassion over control, wisdom over tradition, and humanity over myth. They could not escape their fate, but perhaps by listening we can.